I loves me some 1 degree of Chunky B.
Now, I just have to make a comment about Chunky B. Have you ever seen him looking so good?
The panel then includes actress Lady Kazan, comedian Chunky B, and Playboy TV host Julie Strain. Chunky?
What was the question? Ladies and gentlemen, 1 degree of Chunky B, and I know I'm guilty of saying this week in and week out, but you're going to want to sit down, watch, and listen, because what we have today is something extremely special. You know, we like to joke around, we like to goof around. This is a comedy-driven podcast, but we're not afraid to change it up. You can't box us in. We can't live by your rules. Sometimes you got to stick it to the man. And what I'm about to explain to you, it's all going to come together. But before we tell you the awesomeness that is our next guest, I always like to throw it over to Gary Adler, the executive producer from Four Eyed Films. Say hello, Gary.
Thank you, Chunky. That was a great introduction. And, you know, I just want to say this. A lot of people play this game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Have you heard this, Travis?
Of course.
My man Chunky's got 5 degrees on Kevin Bacon. The only person that does not know Chunky B, Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon. Yeah. And you know what our goal is? Our goal is to track him down.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon, if you're out there, you will be sitting in this chair very soon.
Right. That's right. You know him as the Wizard of the Knobs. He absolutely controls the atmosphere of the world. He goes by the name of Travis Spencer.
Thank you. I'm excited for this one. Really excited for this one.
It's good stuff.
Okay, here's where I need your undivided attention. Of course, we're going to go places that we've never gone to on this beautiful podcast. Everyone is still talking. The dust is not settled. It is still a topic of tea parties to keg parties.
It's still on every night.
Yeah. Something is talking. Everyone is talking. Someone is talking about Blackfish. The woman who wrote it and directed it, Gabriela Cowperthwaite. Cowperthwaite. I don't know. There's too many syllables in there. But you guys, let's just call her Gabrielle because she's a freaking friend of mine. Say hello to the director of Blackfish. We have hit the big time, people.
It's crazy, right?
You know something? Goosebumps. Gabriela, goosebumps. Aww. For you being in that seat right there, we are taking this show places. I feel like it's Star Trek where no podcast has gone before. Let's talk serious.
Okay.
2 things that make you smile. I know them. Max and Diego.
Yes.
The 2 cutest kids on the freaking block. How old are they now?
You just plugged my kids. I want to cry. I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to go have some Venice beer. Yeah. That is just too intense. Yeah. Yes, my dudes, my twin boys, Max and Diego, are 7.
I can't believe it.
Almost 8.
And do you know, because you're so busy, and the good Dr. Brian, who is Gabriela's husband, who is a friend, but schedules, and he's so freaking busy, he doesn't play poker with us anymore. Well, we don't even play poker because another story. But listen to me. I here's why I get goosebumps every time I jog or drive past your house. The other day, I knew your boys were growing up when you put that little chalkboard easel out in your front yard and you were saying goodbye to your chalkboard. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I'm like, her twins are growing up.
Oh, they didn't want to play with the chalkboard easel anymore?
No, they're moving on to bigger and better things. You know when you have a little toy and you use it and then you put it in your front yard because this whole neighborhood is full of kids.
Yeah.
And that thing was, I think that chalkboard wasn't in front of your house for more than 30 minutes. Someone's like, oh my God, a brand new chalkboard.
Yeah.
Okay, so what have you been up to?
Getting rid of my kids' toys.
Yeah.
No, you know this movie, Blackfish. I've been kind of promoting it for the last year and on the freaking roller coaster ride of Blackfish.
Okay, Gary and I have been talking about how do we be professional and open up with like a real like CNN question, but let's just go back to the roots here.
Yeah.
When was that first moment like I'm gonna do a documentary on orcas?
Well, it's a good question, and it everybody thinks I'm like an animal activist and just kind of knew that things were maybe not so good at places like SeaWorld. I didn't know anything. Nothing about killer whales. Knew, not an animal activist. Took my kids to SeaWorld multiple times. So I actually just came in because I'm a documentarian and was kind of confounded and sort of saddened by this tragic accident. The Don Brancho being killed by a killer whale in 2010. Couldn't figure out how that happened. Knew that didn't happen. They don't kill us in the wild. Like, what happened at that park on that day? So I kind of went in almost sort of with a question, not with an argument, right? Just like, what happened? The more I peeled back the onion, the more shocked and stunned I became.
This was your baby? This was your spark of an idea? No one came to you and said, hey, listen, we know you got game in a documentary thing? No. And it was just and you just kept poking and poking.
Well, you kind of do that with documentary. You kind of like, you're, in order to be a documentarian, you're interested in everything. So you just kind of you read all the time, you ask questions, you're sort of that annoying person who wants to get beneath, get past the pat answer, like the PR spin, figure out what happened behind that and what was that person thinking about. So like you pursue. I did read it, and then I read an article called Killer in the Pool by Tim Zimmerman, which was an Outside magazine. And that kind of talked about how killer whales even came to places like SeaWorld in the first place. Something I had never thought of. Like,
Yeah,
you didn't just...
You're so crazy with the plush toys and everything. You don't realize, well, these things were somewhere in the ocean once.
That's right. How did they get there? So this article kind of went into that, and I was like, whoa, this is not about that day, right, of this tragic event. This is a 40-year story.
Right.
And there's so much to kind of unearth here.
And when you were gathering information, then you probably had to pull some people in, right? Like, hey, listen, this project's way bigger than I thought. And then you went up to the Sound up in Washington. You found some old sailors, old salty dogs that were like, oh my gosh, I've been keeping this secret for years. That dude almost, started crying. Yeah. And he knew he was doing something wrong. And that old footage you put, how did you gather all this great information?
I know. It's crazy. Well, one thing is, once you sort of hit your first group of people, they tell you some people who you should talk to, and then those people tell you. So, it's it's a long process, but it's interesting. The one thing I knew about Blackfish is I needed for the people who were in Blackfish to not be kind of like necessarily animal advocates. They had to have done something wrong, right? Like they had to have skin in the game, like the former SeaWorld trainers.
Yeah,
sure.
You know what I mean? Like they touched and they were complicit in this whole thing. Or like the salty dog you talk about, he captured calves. And that's how kind of like, he almost has to sort of, it's almost like a confessional. So in the documentary, when they're finally talking, you feel like they've got to get this stuff off their back.
It's a confessional.
Yeah,
These
it really
guys,
is.
it seemed like the handful of ex-trainers, they wanted something off their chest.
Right.
It was almost like, soothing for them to get it off because they've been holding this secret in.
That's the thing that I found interesting when people reacted to the movie, and then when SeaWorld put out their reply. SeaWorld didn't mention one time that the people in the movie were their former employees. They just sort of skipped over that part.
Right.
That's right. And
you know something? Hold that thought because I want to talk more about that.
Yeah.
But I want to go through some nuts and bolts.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when did it click that you're like, holy shit, I got something big here?
When I found out Tilikum, the whale, had killed twice before, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like this animal's still doing this, and like what's going on with him, and why don't we all know this? That was huge. When I found out that they fight all the time in captivity.
Yeah.
Like I guess there's some part of me or something like, okay, look, animal activists, they came out of the womb caring about animals. I kind of didn't make this movie for them. They know this stuff, right? They've known it. I made it for people like me who were like, I went to SeaWorld and thought, okay, to the extent that all captivity doesn't quite feel 100% right, I'd probably rather be a shamu at SeaWorld than any other animal in like a zoo facility.
Right.
Thinking that it was probably the best, Then I find out that they're like not with their families, right? Like they're with different species. They don't get along, and in the wild, when they fight, like wolves do, they fight for hierarchy. The subdominant animal, the weakest animal, sort of flees and says, all right, touche, you got me.
Right.
And he kind of exists on the outside of the pod, and they leave sort of peacefully ever after. In captivity, nobody ever gets to leave.
Yeah, you can't.
So they just fight constantly.
Yeah.
That was like, oh my God, this is so much worse than, and they're performing, and there's all these, so that was disturbing for me.
Now, as you got that information, was that wind in your sail? Did you feel stronger? Did you feel like I've got to get this out?
Yeah, it's weird. This weird thing happens. Like, you sort of don't think to yourself like I must tell this story. You just sort of you feel like the story is just taking you.
Right.
You feel just like, man, I'm just like a mouthpiece here. I'm just going to tell the facts. Like, that's all I have to do with the story, right? I don't have to just manipulate or shoehorn in all these facts. I was like,
Right.
I'm just going to tell Tilikum's story. It's compelling enough, and just keep it with the facts,
Right.
and let it kind of take me. So yeah, at that point I was like, I guess maybe this is going to be really controversial, and I could be in a lot of trouble, and I'm really scared, and but I guess it's just taking me on this trip, and I got to kind of just hold on to the
There's no
reins.
backing down. Because you
no-
have
you
the
can't.
information that people need to hear. So
That's right.
You couldn't U-turn and say, "Well, wow, this is too big."
Yeah.
Did you ever think you were over your head? No pun intended. But
Oh yeah, I was drowning and over my head.
Really?
Water. Oh yeah, absolutely.
stressing.
Oh,
Dr.
yeah.
Brian, you getting on Dr. Brian's nerves?
Dr. Brian was just so annoyed.
At what
so
point
done
did
with my-
SeaWorld find out you were making a documentary?
I tried to interview them. I was trying to interview them the
Yeah.
whole time. They knew I was out there. They clearly didn't see me as much of a threat, because they were just like, first they were kind of entertaining the idea of being interviewed, and I was like, look, I didn't come in with in vendetta. I go to your parks. In fact, I want to hear your side of why I went there and why 11 million people go there every year. And so they at first said, it was pretty likely we'll grant you an interview.
Right.
So I was like, yes, this is going to be great. Nuance and the other side. Then two things happened. One is I started realizing what had been happening for 40 years.
Right.
And like how sort of dark and bad things had gotten. I mean, basically all this stuff that they've sort of tried to cover for 40 years. I started researching more of that, and then they backed down and they said, no way. So, I
getting
I
too
gave
close.
them my questions. I gave them you never do that as a documentarian, but that's how badly I wanted it. I was like, look, here are my questions. This is it. This is what I want to know. And they said, we're going to decline your interview. So yeah, so I was in touch with them.
Okay,
the entire
when they
time.
declined, did
Yeah.
you say, "Well, put up your dukes because I'm coming at you"? Or
No.
Did you get mad and
Oh
say,
no. At that point, it was just, to me, it was like the story was just the story. It was telling itself. I didn't have this vendetta against them. In fact, up until really recently, I sort of thought maybe they've been evolving this whole time and I just don't know it. Like maybe they know all this stuff and they're going to do better by their animals and their trainers from here on in. And they kind of had a plan the whole time. And then I'm just like, someone who's talking about their past. So I actually thought they'd, take this to sort of a positive evolving direction. So no, I wasn't mad or ready to take them down. I was just like, dudes, come on.
Right.
You've been up to some stuff.
There's something
Let's talk
wrong.
about it. It's
Right.
out there. Let's get it out there and tell us how you're going to evolve us past animals for entertainment in our lifetime. Just tell us, because you're the leaders in this. You're the billion-dollar corporation. And that wasn't their response at all.
"That's crazy"?
It's
That's
nuts,
crazy.
right?
Now, in 2010, when OSHA came knocking on their door, right?
Right.
Did that change things up?
Well, is the OSHA
yeah.
ruling still in effect, which is they're not allowed in the pool?
Yes, it is, but they're appealing it.
Right, but to me, all that is exacerbating the situation even more. It means it's sort of acknowledging that it's okay to have orca whales, just don't get in the pool.
That's right. No, it's very true. It's really complicated. So OSHA did change things up because once OSHA took them to court, and that was happening during the making of the film, I was able to get footage because that footage becomes public record. It becomes exhibits
Right.
through the court, and you can FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, for it. So that was one huge coup for us.
Right.
Plus, I got to sit there in the courtroom and hear SeaWorld, what I imagined the interview would have been like with me. I could kind of hear them testify, and I was like, oh, that's what they would have said. That's creepy, right? They would have
Wow.
stayed with their PR spin. So it did
Right.
change things. But yeah, no, trainers are not in the pool right now, but SeaWorld's going to appeal it and fight very hard to get trainers back in the water. And in fact, that will all kind of come to fruition this year. So it's happening.
Can we talk about the money for a minute? Because
He always likes to talk about money.
no, but because in order to sort of be okay with all of this going on, as the Anheuser-Busch don't they own everything?
They actually don't. It's Blackstone.
Blackstone. Blackstone's okay with it. How much money is SeaWorld making? How much money are these parks pulling in because of the Shamu shows?
Great question. Well, we're told it's about 60 to 70% of SeaWorld's revenue comes from Shamu Stadium.
Wow.
So when you go to SeaWorld, you go to see Shamu.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like their Nike swish, as Jeff Ventry, one of our ex-trainers, calls it. So that's Shamu is their business.
That's their brand.
It's their brand. You know, I've heard in terms of what they pull in a year, I've heard everything from 1.4 billion to 2.7 billion. So it's around $2 billion a year. They're in massive debt. They went public. I think it was spring of last year. And so Blackstone is still their main shareholder, but you know, I mean, they're in debt. So, they're spending a lot for the PR,
I was
the
going to
smear
say,
campaign.
no,
Right?
I mean, you're a big spoke in the wheel on that, right? I mean,
Right.
how does that make you feel that this is a $1 trillion company and little Miss Sassy Britches lives down the street from Chunky B? I'm going to bring this corporation to its knees.
Putting my kid's easel out on the side of the curb, all gentle.
Having a garage sale.
Little green tea. What? Just all nice. Yeah, I know. Right. I don't know. I mean, you know, it's, you know, I'm not that controversial of a person, right? Like it doesn't make me happy to think that people are losing jobs and getting screwed, and like it's just not,
right.
You know what I mean? Like I don't like a bully. Let's put it that way.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
like none of us do, right?
And that's what you're doing. You know, you punched the bully right in the eye. And I think they're
that's
crying,
so cool.
looking for an ice pack. Gabriela just got me. I'm SeaWorld. Ow!
She was the ice pack was pulled in by its ponytail, by the way.
Very good. Yeah.
You know,
Right.
when Gary and I and the Wiz we were talking, and I was like, let's just not recap scene after scene of your documentary. But it's so difficult not to because it's extremely interesting. You had people almost felt as if they wanted to grab the microphone and tell their story. How many people said no?
Good question. You know, a couple people said no last minute. I was not able to get Dawn's family really to come aboard at all. I got a couple quotes from her sisters about what a great person she was, but they were not like complicit in this movie. They didn't know it was going to be, you know, something that was going to kind of expose SeaWorld. You know, you don't know if that at that point, you know, I wasn't sure if that was something they might want or not want. I got this feeling that they just want to move on and kind of just think about their daughter and how she lived her life rather than just talk about that horrible day. So I mean, you know, like, I totally forgot your question.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me just change
I'm like in a whole other world. I'm like in Dawn world, which is really intense.
She became the catalyst for the film, but she clearly enjoyed her job.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so she did well, and you just never know. Like I never got to meet her. So yeah, I guess back to your question about who said no. The family, I thought I needed SeaWorld to make this film work, you know, and it turns out I didn't. And in fact, it would have been really almost hard to have them in there just spinning and PR doing all that.
Sure.
But it was always a big loss that her family wasn't part of it. You know, this is just not the story. This is not her story. This is not the story they think she would have wanted to be told. But I always say to myself that, you know, if this film has a chance of kind of keeping her trainers safe, her other colleagues safe, and caring for the animals she sort of dedicated her life to, then maybe it is something she would have supported, you know, in the end, whatever.
Right. Wow. So, some of the footage that you got, I mean, did you have to like meet in a dark alley and say, hey, listen, here's your $20, give me the footage from 78 or whatever, you know?
Right. No, well, again, some of it came from the Freedom of Information Act. Some of it came from people's personal archives. I mean, the thing about a place like SeaWorld is everybody
has a video camera.
Everybody has a video camera. So if you can't get it from this angle,
you just go online and say,
well, the internet is huge. Like you find people who like put something there and said like, oh, we filmed this or whatever, and you find them, and then they say, oh, well, my friend had another camera, so we get another angle. I mean, you know, that's the hardest part, I think, with documentary is just that kind of research. but all you need is like just a few seconds. So
Everyone
you're
has
just
home
waiting for that.
movies even. Of
Yeah.
that. I have home movies of Seaquarium in Miami.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
my friend's mom was a trainer there of dolphins. It's just
Really?
Yeah, Bryn Ingram.
Wow. Wow.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
let me ask you, when the dust is settling, I know this is a goofy question. I've watched it a couple times, and I've watched a couple of your interviews and people, some naysayers, some controversial stuff
Right.
that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But even the music that you chose for some of the scenes, I was like, how in the hell did you come up with it? Because it fit perfectly. It was almost like, it was almost like a light little heartedness, and then all of a sudden you see a whale bleeding.
Right,
And
right, right.
I just found that your music selection was really impressive. Did you have something? Was that your call?
Thank you. We had a composer, and but I'm very like the one thing. Music is so important to me. Like sound design, music, all that stuff. I mean, you guys too. Like
That was a good question. You see that, dude? That was a good question.
Good
for you.
You guys don't think I come up with good questions?
That's
These
like
guys,
industry insider stuff right
you have
there.
to see, like before every podcast, they're like, "Chunky, here's a question. Here's a question." That was on my own. That was look at that. That's my handwriting.
That was all
me.
you, man.
Yes.
See, music, right?
See, I picked that
you
vibe
with your
up.
jazz, right?
That's
Remember?
right.
See,
Yeah.
I mean,
So, but you purposely.
we had an amazing composer named Jeff Beal, and he composed, and I actually it was funny because my editor kind of cut in his music from some other documentary he had done before just because we loved it so much. And so we worked with him, and there was just things I wanted to be light and things I wanted to have gravitas, and pacing is everything, right? So
We've got a handful more questions
Can
you.
I ask one before we cut away?
Yeah. Can you make it a tease?
Yeah.
Let's.
How many orcas are in captivity right now?
I think it's around 48
48 all over the world, or just at
so.
SeaWorld?
I think that's all over the world. I will have to check. Yeah, I gotta brush up on those facts,
right.
but it's right around there.
Let's check that information.
Yeah. Let's look that up. Gabriela Cowperthwaite.
Yeah.
We're going to be right back after this short break, and I want to let you know we're going to mix it up a little bit.
Okay.
We're gonna put up
Yeah.
our dukes, and
We're going to pretend we're SeaWorld.
Okay. Come at it. All right.
All right, you guys, we're going to be back. This is Chunky B and 1 Degree of Chunky B on ChunkyB.tv with Gabriela, and of course you got Adler and you got the Wizard. We're going to be back right after this. You guys are great. Hey, you guys, this week's music is Funky Zen Groove by Tak Fu. Now, you can find this and hundreds of more cool tracks at playupmusic.com. You guys have got to check out our brand new sponsor, Venice Duck Brewery. You want to get your quack on? Taste some of this.
I'm Gabriela Cowperthwaite, director of Blackfish, and I'm on 1 Degree of Chunky B.
All right, we are back. I told you this was going to be awesome, and it is completely awesome. Blackfish, the director, the writer, Gabriela, my friend from right down the street. A lot of people don't realize how cool this neighborhood is.
Oh my God.
Isn't it great?
It's so
Isn't it great? And I want people to know where they can dial into your stuff.
Okay.
What you got?
Right now, iTunes and Netflix.
Yeah.
You can get the DVD on Amazon. iTunes and Netflix is
If
the way
someone
to go.
had a question for you, where would they go?
Probably to my website, probably to the Blackfish website. And then if I can't answer it, more scientific question or something like that, I can just punt it to somebody who can.
Excellent.
But yeah, blackfish.com, blackfishmovie.com.
Yeah. I'm so impressed. I mean, because I've known you, and I dug your other, and I know I'm going off thing, but
Right.
we'll bring it back.
Right.
Like even your document, we have a mutual friend, Jake Seinfeld.
Oh, Jake is the best.
Body by Jake is a friend of mine.
Yes. Oh, he's the best guy.
I've got his book right over there.
Oh, I know.
Isn't he?
Don't quit, right?
Oh God, no.
He'll be on in 2 weeks, by the way.
Yeah,
Will-
yeah. He's got to be.
He's the best. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
If you guys know him by Body by Jake, and his kid and my kid played lacrosse together up in the Palisades, and guess who does a documentary, inner city Denver kids documentary? Gabriela.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm so glad you know that documentary too. Since I'm very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you plug a couple of your other films?
That's my first independent feature. My
What
first
was that
independent
called?
documentary is called City Lax. about inner city kids playing lacrosse. I just followed them from the moment they picked up sticks to the state championship.
Yeah.
And it was like my first, near and dear to me.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know if you noticed on the side yard, I've got like 6 different lacrosse sticks. We got the pitch back for lacrosse. Jack's starting up at Paul Revere, starting up his brand new team. But let's get back to what we're talking about. We're talking about something so huge and it's so educational that I'm going to actually throw it over to Gary because he's got something he really wants to talk about.
It's pivotal too. My first question is: did you try and interview James Earl Jones?
No, I didn't.
Because he was the spokesman for
Yeah.
SeaWorld, and he showed up
That's
in your
funny.
film quite a bit.
He did. He was a spokesperson. Gosh, I feel like someone did try to contact him at some point and just sort of see what he thinks about the whole thing, but
Right.
I don't remember how that netted out.
I'm going to go through a list of the things that SeaWorld replied
Sure.
ultimately to the movie.
Right.
Okay, 1, SeaWorld does not capture orcas in the wild. They said the last time it happened was 35 years ago. 2, SeaWorld does not separate calves from their mothers. Okay, they said that. 3, SeaWorld invests millions for state-of-the-art facilities and care. 4, SeaWorld's whale lifespan is equivalent to that in the wild. They're claiming around 35 to 50 years. Whales at SeaWorld benefit whales in the wild. Okay, that was one of their points. And the last point was SeaWorld is a leader in animal rescue. Now, my question is to you, does SeaWorld do any good? And if so, where do we draw the line?
This was a huge deal for me, this whole question, because this is a thing that I thought they could have said in the film and sort of told us, why do you even exist then? So in answer to the first question, should we go march down that way, or should we just talk about like conservation and education? And
Yeah, I'd like to
that kind
know
of
if you think SeaWorld, does provide a service of some sort.
Sure.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So basically, conservation was the big one for me. I always thought this place was like super kind of green. Like they really were environmental. Like, I don't know, you go there and you think this place is, I'm sure they're doing huge things for, orcas in the wild or whatever. Fishery, the fishing industry and what's happening with that. And so I just did research, talked to everybody on every side of it. Basically, their conservation is about 0.6% of their total profit. So not even 1% of what they get
Really?
do they put back into conservation. So that blew me away. Now, that 0.6, fantastic, right? Great. They are doing something. The point is why in the world, why aren't they doing more, right? There's been no transparency up until sort of recently. So that was huge for me. Rehabilitation and release. Now, this is something that they will sort of like take, animals, rehab them, and then release them.
From like an oil spill or whatever.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or just like, our oceans are pretty toxic right now, right? So like animals will wash up. And I found out that they do that, but they only do it for kind of a couple hundred animals a year. Like, and it's mostly sea turtles and manatees, animals that don't have any kind of entertainment value. And so, and we went in the back. Like if you go in the back, I got a tour of the facility really early on. And there was like a sea turtle, and it was in one of those kiddie pools, and it was like flipped over, and like no one would flip it back. It was just one of those things you're just like, and then finally someone came and flipped it back over. It was just like, you just know they could be doing better. Yeah. And there were some dolphins kind of being held in this thing, and it was just sort of decrepit. Like, okay, so when are you going to release them? Or, are you actually going, because it's a dolphin, it has entertainment value. Is that dolphin going to ultimately be trained for one of your shows? So, it's just like, yes, they do something. We don't want them to stop doing the good things. We just want them to stop doing the bad things and concentrate on the good things. So in our minds, SeaWorld would actually spearhead kind of the evolution, like push us past animals for entertainment and do something like sea sanctuaries, right? Like cordon off a big part of an ocean cove with a net and kind of semi-release these animals, kind of retire them to the ocean at least.
Right.
You could charge visitor fees. This could be a business model. Our kids could go see animals, still sort of up close, and yet it'd be so much more dignified, and respectful and sustainable and all that stuff. So there was all these reasons for them to still exist. In terms of the other questions, there's the two big ones. I mean, it's just, they don't capture, we never say in Blackfish that they continue to sort of go out and capture animals in their boats. But the fact is they don't have to do that themselves. They just have other countries do it.
That's what I was going to ask. If you and I wanted to start a whale attraction, like who would we call to pick up an orca?
Right. Well,
I don't mean to cut you off.
Go
We
for
call what's his name, Tilikum, and buy some of his sperm because
exactly
that guy is all everywhere.
Right.
You know what blew me away was that this guy has knocked out 2 people, right?
Yeah.
3 actually. Yeah.
3. And all of a sudden, his sperm's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the guy's a mad whale.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, there's like great grandkids of his doing the same shit going on. It's just cycling.
That's it. That's the thing. And you just wonder, is it genetic or is it, Blackfish is making the case that it's actually environmental.
That's what
that
I
makes him do
think.
that. But
I mean, for
why
me, he
take
was a
that
prisoner
chance?
who's never been rehabbed properly. You know?
Right. But then I was like, well, why even take that chance? Right?
true.
Like if there is something, if he's sort of 10% more aggressive than the average whale, more prone to killing someone, why would you ever take that chance and keep breeding them? So it's amazing. But so they do, they're actually right now, SeaWorld's part of a consortium of different places trying to import like 18 belugas from Russia. So they're able to get, you guys, what's so important for everyone to understand is they need fresh DNA. They've been inbreeding their animals for so long. They're hitting a genetic bottleneck.
Interesting.
So they are looking at around the world for animals. And there was a whale, a killer whale named Morgan, who kind of was sick up near the Netherlands. And everybody knew, everybody in the industry was like, watch Gabriela. That whale will end up at SeaWorld. She was a little sick. Local law says that she needs to be rehabbed and then returned back to her family. They found her family, everything. They suddenly declared her unreleasable. Oh, she's eaten from human hands for a couple weeks, for a few weeks.
Right.
No way, she'll never learn how to hunt again. She's now at Laurel Parque, which is with SeaWorld-owned whales.
Tenerife.
Right.
In Tenerife, exactly. So they can, and now she's going to be bred, right? So they can get fresh genes. They can get fresh animals without having to capture them themselves.
Now, not to get off the subject, but when they bring in a new trainer, it's got to be one of their first jobs to jerk off the whale. I mean, that's pretty low on the totem
Seriously.
pole.
Is that what they do?
Yeah, didn't you see the movie?
Well, yeah.
And it was dudes, and I was like, hang on, can we at least,
So dudes were doing Tilikum?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting you say that. Like some of the trainers.
Is there any job openings? I'm sorry.
You
no.
do have nice hands.
I moisturize. Gabrielle, I'm sorry. No disrespect.
Just need to, prepare.
First of all, it's things dudes think about when they're watching that part.
Oh, please. Like everybody thinks about it. Everybody's watching it going, wow.
Look at the size of that.
It's just insane. No, it is an insane part. And you know what's really sad about it, I think, is just like there are trainers who left, not because they were grossed out being asked to do that. They were just like this is so undignified. This is so incredibly sad. This animal has like nothing. He doesn't swim with other animals. He gets beat up by other animals. Nobody can swim with him because he's clearly a liability and he will kill people. And yet this is like what he has to do. Like it's just sort of so sad. And so they would just, in terms of the breeding or whatever, like I think you have to be pretty high up at Shamu Stadium to be able to do that. It can be dangerous. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn. Maybe it can't be dangerous. I don't know.
You could lose an eye.
I've heard the noises coming from Chunky's room. I mean,
It's dangerous.
It can be dangerous.
Well, and you also don't want to be associated. I think a trainer, John Hargrove, was telling me like it's really tricky. You don't want necessarily for them to associate you with that act because if it's like a terrible thing for them, they don't want you to exact revenge. If it's, they just don't want people, the whales, to sort of identify necessarily you as being part of that. I'm kind of going off top. Like I don't even know what I'm.
It's a strange thing.
You'd have to talk to a trainer about it. I feel like I'm sort of cobbling together things I've heard them say, but it's really insane and incredibly like the thing that all trainers say needs to stop. Like even trainers who are still working there think the captive breeding thing is just like,
But they're
most
proud
of them
it.
I've talked to don't like
They're
it.
absolutely proud of it, and that was what they said when we don't capture live whales anymore. Our program is so successful that we haven't had to do that in 35 years.
But now it looks like a bunch of whales from Deliverance.
Right.
Ding, 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 ding. Seriously.
Been inbreeding for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
get some fresh vagina
So
in
can
there.
we get back to the question, where would you draw the line as a human being? Do you draw it at dolphins, tropical fish, He's got goldfish. I mean, is that
They're not goldfish. They're fancier than that.
Well, I know you got them from.
But I don't train them. Hello.
Which I think, honestly, for myself, we need to be done with animals for entertainment. Period. Like, I just think that
Across
animals
the board.
across the board, no animals, no circuses, no
Yo,
anything.
oh
This
my
is just
God.
so like,
I don't even bring my kids to circuses. Maybe
I know.
Circus Olay.
yeah,
but
yeah.
no,
Cirque du
Humans.
Soleil, you mean? Circus Olay is in Mexico.
what I say? That's the one I go to. The one in Mexico. I can't afford the one at the pier. Yeah. See what I got to deal with. Since we're having such a good time, how much money did you make off this?
How much? Me personally?
Yeah. Shut the door.
Can I do that right to the camera?
Wow.
Goose egg.
But you're gonna
Personally-
make big on the next
no,
one.
we weren't even. Yeah, we weren't paid for her last year. We worked on it. We were paid for the first year. We worked on it by our investors, but no, we have not made any money. Look, documentary film is not
Yeah.
a lucrative. Like, you don't get into this to just like make money. But the film has made money.
Yeah.
People go see it. I mean,
Who's
60
getting that
million
money?
people. What's that?
Who's getting that money?
Well, the investor, it's sort of like everybody who invests in it, whether it's our own investors or it's the distributors buying it from us, they're pretty much taking a big risk. And I will say that for them.
Right.
Nobody sees documentaries in theaters. We
Yeah,
don't
right.
go and do that, right? Like it's not. And so it's a risk for sure. My hope is that if more distributors got behind it, if more investors got behind it, and just
Right.
kind of pumped it out, kind of like CNN did and Magnolia Films did.
Yeah.
Just pump it out there and just sort of say, hey, there's this thing. Here's this hot trailer. It's entertaining. A 15-year-old kid who doesn't care at all about whales will enjoy this just as much as someone who cares a lot.
Right.
Like get it out there. Then I think people will come.
Now, CNN picked it up, but didn't they say, wasn't there a couple CNN interviews that gave you a hard time too?
Maybe. No, did they? Oh, did they?
I just remember seeing you in a box. Maybe it wasn't even CNN.
Oh, yeah.
Well, some people give you a
Probably.
tough
Oh,
time
no,
about
sure.
it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. CNN with Jack Hanna, maybe?
Yeah.
After the film?
Oh,
Yeah.
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 What
Oh,
was
yeah.
that
Well,
all
CNN
about?
is good. I mean, they're journalistically, they toted the line, and they were very much like, look, this is a film we have on our show, but it's controversy, and let's get the other voices in here. And so, yeah, Jack Hanna was like yelling
What was
at
the
us.
Jack
and-
story?
What's that?
What was the bottom line with the Jack story?
What was he sort of saying?
Yeah.
And everything. It was a little hard to understand, to be perfectly honest. We were just like, wait, what? What's going on? Because he was saying, Steele does some amazing things. Who would even care? He said a couple of good things. Like he said, who would even care about these animals had you not really seen them at SeaWorld to begin with? Which I think is actually the strongest point that SeaWorld could ever make. Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that why we know that dolphins and, killer whales are special? Because as kids, we experienced them, and saw them up close and everything. So I do think that there's truth to that,
Right.
Yeah.
and I actually think that's a good point. The point is that like the most important thing we learned from having them in captivity is that they shouldn't be in captivity.
Absolutely.
Right. And we learned it really early.
And
We
how do
didn't,
you
take us all this time to
justify?
figure that out.
How do you justify? Okay, we're all about conservation and releasing animals into the wild, but fill up our stadium and we're going to make animals do tricks for you for the next hour.
Right.
How is
right.
that? How do you?
I think that's true. And actually, I think if you tell the average person, okay, what you're seeing here is not like a happy animal saying yes and like getting this like happy fish. What you're seeing here is not that at all. Like this is an animal that's just been fighting, right?
Yep.
Probably maybe been stripped from their mom, or as a breeding female, maybe had their calf stripped from them. And, they put them on Valium afterwards because they actually grieve their young, just like we do, just like elephants, or, fighting all the time, dying early deaths, completely bored, might have had aggressive incidents and taken down a bunch of trainers. Who knows?
Right.
I mean, would you still, is it worth it? Like you ask a kid, if you knew that animal was kind of suffering to give you this little, hour
Right.
of entertainment, would you still go? And most people say no. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, isn't there a better way to do this? Right.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I read hundreds of comments online after the SeaWorld's reply. Okay,
Right.
This was the most poignant one I found. As someone who's been going to SeaWorld regularly since I was a child, I've seen it go through many changes over the past 20 years. I think in my case, SeaWorld did accomplish their mission for educating people about marine life. So effective were those early lessons that I have now become an adult who cannot be comfortable watching beautiful and intelligent animals like orca whales jump for fish like circus performers. It is because I am educated and experienced as the guest of this park regularly that I don't want any more Shamu shows. SeaWorld spends their money building roller coasters nowadays. Let the orcas go, let the kids ride the coasters, and those wide-eyed children you educated 20 years ago will be proud to bring their kids to your park.
I love it.
Right?
Go. I
Goosebumps.
love it. I love it.
What's coming down the pike?
What's coming down the pike? I'm kind of percolating some stuff, developing some stuff. But
Too early to talk about it? Break it down right here at the podcast.
Break it down right now,
Yeah.
right? No, I mean, I'm developing some stuff, but I have to be perfectly honest. This thing, like Blackfish,
Yeah.
it is so on all the time. Like, it just hasn't let up
man.
for 1 second. You can't feel comfortable moving on to something else until this thing's like safely out the door.
Right.
Yeah, there's like SeaWorld's bashing us right now. We're on CNN on Saturday night, and apparently they just went crazy on social media, and they got all their minions and everything to just be like,
Right.
no, it's all lies.
Well, that's the
You know?
thing. Facebook has, just blown this thing to pieces, man. Just,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, what a huge advantage nowadays if you got something.
Yeah, absolutely. And Twitter, like all these kids are, tweeting in like, wait, oh my God.
Well, I went recently, and I'll confess, SeaWorld is a client of mine.
Right.
The last thing I did for them was design a logo called SeaWorld Kids. And I took my kids to the park.
Right.
I gotta say, and I apologize to my clients. Maybe you won't never hire me again. There's a little yuck factor. You know what I mean?
Elaborate.
Well, you go there and it's this big show, but I'm an intelligent adult, and I've been around the ocean my whole life. My brother's a captain. Okay, I was in the Bahamas every summer, and it's just like you sit there and go, ugh, there's something wrong here.
That's it.
Yeah.
I call it the cringe factor.
Yeah.
We all have it. We go there and we're like, oh, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, maybe it's because it's cheesy, or maybe it's because it's like overblown, like
Yeah, but
thumping
then
music.
this
But then
guy,
you're like,
Up with People is like,
Yeah,
oh,
that's
that's because
exactly what it
so-and-so.
is.
And it's like, no, dude.
I know. And like, we can't underestimate the whole trainer safety thing too. Like, I mean, I know that Blackfish is really, you come away with it with a takeaway point about the whales, but look, it's like nobody's benefiting here. Like, these trainers are paid like nothing, right? To put themselves front and center. They love the animals. They're the ones who care for them on a daily basis, and they're the ones being paid nothing, destroying their bodies. I mean, you would believe, like, we didn't even go into that. Like, knees are done from jumping on concrete for years and years. Backs are out. Their ears pretty much blow out from deep water work and the cold.
Sure.
I mean, it's just like you're useless. In fact, they actually put you out to pasture after Shamu Stadium, and I guess it's called, putting out to pasture. Either they sort of look for reasons to sort of get rid of you, or you can be demoted, and or I guess they don't call it demotion, but you move to another stadium and go to Sea Lion and Otter Stadium, where you're there, training animals like that. Yeah. So anyway, it's just like, who wins there?
I was shocked at how naive the trainers were to the sort of zoological aspects of these animals, and then the history of them and their.
Because they didn't study that in college.
It's crazy.
They got janitors from the kitchen saying, "Hey, listen, you look good in a wetsuit. Grab a bucket of fish and let's get to work."
Yeah.
Right. I know. No, in fact, there's trainers that say if you knew too much, or like you were dialed into science, like you were a liability to them, right? Because if you suddenly know that like killer whales can live 60, 70, 80 years, and you're seeing them die at 25 to 35, or not even get to 25. You're kidding me? Like, they usually die in their teens and 20s. Then what are you going to start thinking? What are you going to feel comfortable telling the public?
Right. We're going to get close to wrap this up, but I want to ask you, why were you in London?
Oh, for the...
You flew in last night to here.
Flew back, yeah.
Just for the podcast, right?
You flew in for a podcast.
Exactly. That's right.
And by the way, she never hesitated. She never said no. As soon as
I'm
I
telling
reached
you.
out to her, she was like, yes, thank you.
Oh,
Love her.
please. Oh, my gosh. Well, No, it's my pleasure, my honor. But I was in London for the BAFTAs, the British Academy Awards. We were nominated.
Nice.
We did not win, but it was still cool.
But you lost to a great film.
It was an amazing film. It's called Act of Killing. Go see it.
Oh Lord. Okay. All right.
It might
And
be
no
too
Oscar
heavy for the
nod?
show.
There was no Oscar
Yeah.
nod?
What's up with that? You a little bitter about the Oscar?
We were shortlisted, which was further than I ever thought we would get with something like this. But no, to be perfectly honest, and it's just I feel like I'm like the only person who was like, hey, okay,
Cool.
We were seen by how many million?
Oh my God.
It's 50 million people this year, you know?
Yeah.
Like we want, like it's such a big victory having had this film go so far that for me it was like, no, just be happy that, be grateful that we came this far.
Right on.
Plus our 400
What?
audience members.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Are we up to 400?
Yeah, we're about 400.
Something tells me we're going bigger because Gabriela's in the garage of love. Listen, in closing thoughts, do you have any?
I don't have any closing thoughts other than it's been an absolute pleasure having her here.
No doubt.
And would love to have her back after her next movie.
Okay. Even before that.
Yeah.
You know something? We'll have you back and we won't even do a podcast. We're going to have you over for dinner.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
And bring those cute little punks of yours.
I love it. They're such punks.
Yeah. You know, I know Travis, you know, somebody, he's gonna ask something. Can you make it short and sweet, dude?
So here's the question. Have you heard that the CIA is researching dolphins and whales to know their intelligence? So they've been studying these animals for years. So I'm putting it out there that it goes even deeper than this. That SeaWorld and Anheuser-Busch and the corporation above them are somehow tied into this global conspiracy that they don't want us to know how intelligent these animals are. Any thoughts?
That's the freak he is.
Yeah,
just
he
go
is.
with it. That's
You
the
know what? I freaking love it. You're just taking, you know what? You just like are taking this and
Yep.
snowballing, and I freaking love it because, you know, I will say something about their intelligence. There's a story that was not in the film, but our trainer was kind of one of them, John Hargrove, one of our trainers in our film was kind of leapt off this whale doing a trick, and he broke all his ribs when he landed. So he's in the middle of the pool, and this killer whale is her name was Takara, and she's doing like these slow laps around him, trying to figure out why he's not swimming to the side of the pool like he should. And she starts echolocating on him. Okay, so we didn't even discuss echolocation. I used to think it was like bat sonar, like you know where a wall is.
Right.
It's like a sonogram. It's like it's like an ultrasound.
Oh,
They're like seeing inside you.
Oh my goodness.
So she's doing that, and he can feel the buzzing. You can feel the buzzing when they do it. So she's trying to figure out. She's ostensibly might be seeing his broken ribs. Comes like underneath him, and picks him up super gently, slowly to the side, and then puts herself in this impossible position so he didn't have to bend his legs when he got to the side.
That's
and
incredible.
then calls for help.
and then gobbled him up.
Stop it.
Literally gobbled him down at that
I
point.
mean, you don't know where these things are going to go.
That was a sensitive story.
It was a very sensitive, touching story about.
yeah.
But I mean, it speaks to the intelligence.
Yeah.
Same
So, and
reality,
it's just like,
yeah.
are you kidding?
But here's the thing: those animals, they have an intuition to connect with humans, and that's
Yeah.
the heartstrings that SeaWorld pulls on.
That's exactly
Right.
it.
Right.
That's
Right.
exactly
Because in the wild, they'll come up to a boat they've been known to, and
Yeah.
they'll be in touch with the dog or the cat or
it.
whatever's
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the boat.
yeah, absolutely,
right, yeah.
absolutely.
All right. What an amazing afternoon in the Garage of Love.
Love it.
Gabriela, thank you so much. It's
my
Blackfish.
pleasure.
She wrote it. She directed it. And if you haven't seen it, just get out of that rock that you're living under and open your mind, open your soul, open your heart. Gabriela, thank you for being in the Garage of Love. Adler,
Thank you.
you're the greatest. The Wizard of the Knobs. Travis Spencer. I'm Chunky B. This is ChunkyB.tv. I'm just so juiced up from this great experience I just had.
Oh.
ChunkyB.tv, 1 degree of Chunky B. Thank you so kindly. And tell everybody about this podcast because it's truly special. We are DONE. Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Now, I just have to make a comment about Chunky B. Have you ever seen him looking so good?
The panel then includes actress Lainey Kazan, comedian Chunky B, and Playboy TV host Julie Strain. Chunky?
What was the question?